Good morning and welcome to today's lesson on 6.6. Today we're going to be talking about kites. So to start with, our goal for today, be able to identify a kite and know some properties of kites. Then our essential question is, what is a kite and what do we know about it? So our first step about a kite, our first idea here, a kite is a quadrilateral that has two pairs of consecutive congruent sides, but opposite sides are not congruent. So notice we have two sets of sides here. Those two are congruent, these two are congruent, but notice opposite sides are not. Right? Opposite sides are not congruent. Again, with any of these theorems, if you need to pause the video, please feel free to do so, but I'm going to move forward here. Next one, if a quadrilateral is a kite, then its diagonals are perpendicular. Diagonals are perpendicular, right? We know what that means. That means they cross at a 90-degree angle. And then notice this information right here. Diagonals in a kite make two sets of congruent triangles. Look at the top set. This triangle is congruent to this one. And then this triangle, that one, is congruent to that one right there. So two sets of congruent triangles. So they're perpendicular and create those. Next one, if a quadrilateral is a kite, then exactly one pair of opposite angles are congruent. So we look here, the pair of angles that are congruent are these ones that are in between the two sides that are not congruent. Right? It's always those angles that are in between those two non-congruent sides. So never the angles in between the two congruent sides. So we have an example here. It says, what angles are congruent? Well, if we're looking here, notice this side is congruent to this one. This side is congruent to this one. On the last page, we just talked about it's the angles that are in between those two that are congruent to one another. And that's what this talks about right here. Right? Two congruent angles are always in between the non-congruent sides. The non-congruent sides. All right, we look at this one again, one more quick one. Which angles are congruent? Again, these angles that are in between the non-congruent sides. So next example here, we're given some information we need to solve for x and solve for y. So what we have to do is we have to use the Pythagorean theorem. So we have to solve this and take a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are always our legs of our triangle, so the 5 and the 6 here. And then y, in this case, is our c value. So we add these together, we get 61 is equal to y squared. Right, to counteract something that's squared, we got to take the square root. So we get y is equal to about 7.8. Right, now we're going to do the same thing over here, but with this triangle, we take 12 squared plus 5 squared equals x squared. We do this, we get 169 is equal to x squared. And again, to counteract that, we'll do it in red again. Got to take the square root of both sides. We end up getting a nice answer for this one of 13. Nice answer of 13. So again, if we got to find a side, we can use Pythagorean theorem. So this one's asking us for our angle measurements. One thing I want us to notice right away, right? These angles are going to be congruent to one another. Those angles are going to be congruent to one another. So I'm going to first set it up. We know that since it's a four-sided figure, it's going to add up to 360 degrees, right? You could use n minus 2 times 180 to get to that. So now that we have this, we're going to combine things together. But one thing I want to talk about real quick is this, right? We just said those two are congruent. So instead of dealing with a y, I'm just going to plug in x for that spot as well. So I'm going to combine those terms. So we get 190 plus, instead of a y, I'm going to make it another x. 2x equals 360. 2x is equal to 170. X is equal to 85. So that means we can plug in 85 for x. And since we know that these are equal to one another, we can also plug 85 in for y. Again, 85 for our y. So next problem here. We're given this triangle. We need to find out some information here. First thing, key thing with diagonals. In a kite, we know that they are perpendicular. So we know that angle 1, measure angle 1 is equal to 90 degrees. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on this triangle right here. So looking at this, we know that this adds up to 180 degrees, so we got to figure out what is this measurement. Well, the measure of angle 2 is 90 plus 52 plus angle 2 equals 180. If we solve for it that way, we'd find angle 2 to give us 38 degrees. And now our last one, we have to remember we talked about this. These triangles are congruent to one another. So every piece of them share the same angle measurement or same side length as another piece in the other triangle. In this case, angle 3 is the same as this angle 52, so it is 52 degrees. So one last problem here. We have a triangle again. Again, notice 90-degree angle. So angle 1, 90 degrees. Now we got to find our other pieces. So right, if this is 36 degrees, we know that this is also 36 degrees. So angle 3 is going to be 36. And now we just focus on this triangle to find angle 2. We know that that's a right angle right here. We know that this is 36 degrees. We got to figure out what's left over to get us to 180. And that would be 54 degrees. So that is it for today on kites from 6.6.